Through the Veil podcast. I'm Elle,
I'm Camille.
and we have Amanda with us today. We thought today we would talk a little bit about what it's like to have a session and what that feels like, what it looks like. Amanda just had a session with us last week for her very first time, and so she would love to share her experience with us today.
So it was your first session you'd done. What was your thought about it? What were your takeaways? Was it what you expected? Was it not? Like, what was your perception of it?
Coming in, what were
So,
you like afraid of? What was it like leading up to it?
so I think for me it was just a good experience because first off, overall good experience. Secondly, the first time I'd ever been introduced to even the concept of a medium, even just saying the word medium was like not in my vocabulary, not in my radar whatsoever. But when I was a young women's leader back in years ago, one of the young women had gone to a medium. She was kind of like uh her I can't remember, somebody in her family had passed away, and so she went to a medium. And I was like, as a leader, my heart, I'm like desiring for all of these girls to draw to Christ. So I'm like hesitant because in my head I'm like, you went to a medium, like I don't know if that's okay. I didn't say anything to her like that, but I did like ask her about her experience, and she said it was really cool, and there were things that only the like somebody that was deceased would only know, and type stuff. Anyway, so that was my very, very first introduction ever into that realm, that's a thing. And then fast forward, never thought about it again. Fast forward, Elle and I are talking one day in the car, and she's like, oh, by the way, I am a spirit communicator. And I was like, oh, cool. What does that mean? And then she, helped explained further. And to be honest, I don't think I would necessarily have been willing to do a session if I didn't know Elle first, because I knew her heart and her relationship with the Lord, that I wasn't afraid or worried about anything. So essentially, I was skeptical, like I would say most people are. And then going into the session, I was a little bit nervous, afraid, because I don't ever want to do anything that will offend my Father in heaven. And so but I kept like remembering like who I'm doing this with. Like, not that people can't lead us astray, but Elle's fruits have been good. Like, she definitely has a desire to only worship the Lord and do his will. So I felt comfortable having this session. And then I trusted her with the other people that she's helping introduce their gifts towards. So
Right.
that
It
at
was a
least
learning
opened the
circle.
willingness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a learning circle. So there were a couple other people also learning spirit communication who were essentially practicing their gifts and their
Yeah.
skills. Walk us through how the session went. Like, what was your experience like? What happened during the session?
First of all, it was later at night because most of the ladies, I think, have kids, myself included. So we had to wait till it was bedtime so that you can like concentrate and not have people interrupt. And
Because we're real
so
people with real lives.
exactly. So it was like 10 o'clock, which genuinely for me, 9 o'clock is bedtime. So it was later for me. And Elle lives in the neighborhood that I do. So because I was skeptical, because I'd never done it before, I asked her, I like jokingly, but also like really, I was like, can we do this from my house, or do I need to come to your house? Because I don't really want to go home at nighttime by myself, walk from your house back home after this session. Because I felt like, I think in my head, I thought I was going to like totally connect with spirits. And then like all of a sudden I'm going to be able to like really feel their presence or something.
Like,
They're gonna
I think your
talk
words
to you
were,
on your
I
way
don't
home.
want them to follow me home in the dark.
Yeah, essentially. So, so I just did
That
it
didn't
anyways.
happen though.
No,
They
it
didn't
didn't
follow you
happen
home in the
first
dark.
off.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I just did it from my closet because everyone in my house was asleep, and that was where I decided to do it. And then we started out, she just introduced people. Like I said, they're just real people that have, it just made it so not Hollywood to me, I guess I would say, because it's like some of the ladies had to come in late. Some of the ladies actually were rushed. They completely forgot about it. So they showed up like a little bit later. And it was just real life, like, hey, so anyway, so that was cool. That was comforting to me. Is just like, it just made me think that this really is just it's a spiritual gift. It's not like, the person that has the gift is anything more special or different than a regular human being. They might have a clearer connection with that gift through the spirit world, but they're still also just humans.
Mhm.
And they're just practicing a skill or a gift and trying to tune that skill. Cause I feel like the Lord can use, the sharper the instrument, the better precision he can get for whatever he needs, I think.
It's a good analogy.
So yeah. So then the way we started too, like, I'm religious. So I asked if we could start with a prayer, because I don't think you necessarily have to, but I desired to. So I offered the prayer, and then each lady, like, if we would have done it, from what I understand, Elle, is if we would have done it just like one-on-one, then each individual spirit communicator would have kind of done their own preparatory thing to whatever the before the session or right before the
Right.
session. But for us, what we did, like I said a prayer, and then kind of just like started. But also the others were allowed to, if they have a routine that they kind of do before, then they could.
Yeah, everybody has their own individual connection process.
Yeah. So then Elle just asked them all to kind of like fill in and connect and see if anybody was coming up, which was an interesting thing for me too, because I had no one in specific in mind that I wanted to communicate with. So it was just whoever kind of was coming up. So I asked a lot of questions throughout the experience. One being like, how do you communicate? Like, how do you get the spirit's attention? Like, do we ring a doorbell in the spirit world, or like, is Elle up there raising her hand? Like, how does that kind of work? Which you can either go into now or later, but that was definitely a question.
We can just kind of address that now. I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
people have that question. People come into it and they're like, well, can I talk to somebody specific? Like, how does this work? Who do we do? And the answer is either way. Like, it doesn't matter. If you want to do kind of like Amanda, where it's anyone, just who shows up, who's there. Or if you come in and you have a specific name, I have very, very, very rarely not been able to find someone. And as to how that works, Amanda was like, "Is like an airport sign." Like you're standing
Yeah.
at the airport holding the sign. And my answer is I kind of think the spirit world just works differently. They're aware in a much more spiritual, mental awareness than we are here. They're much, much more connected, especially because most of these people that want to interact with us are people related to us. They have something to do with us. They care about us and are involved more than we know
They're
in our
invested.
lives. They're invested. That's a good word for it.
Yeah, I think of it as, because I've read a lot of like over 200 near-death experiences, and I feel like when people are in the spirit world, because if our world is here, their world is just like right here. It's a different dimension. It's not like we're here and they're so far away, right? They're just kind of connected right on top, like right with us. That it's kind of like they have an antenna on their heads for specific people that they're looking out for. So, for example, in my situation with my son who's passed away, like if he knows I'm having a hard day, he can kind of look in and see what's going on, and even pick up on like my emotions or kind of thoughts, or just kind of see, oh, how's mom doing? And then he can send help. So if someone like Amanda is going to be, meeting with someone who has this gift, people that are looking out for you are going to be aware because they watch you enough to know what's going on. And they're going to think,
Right.
oh, okay, well, I'm going to show up then because I want to talk to Amanda. Why wouldn't I want to talk to Amanda? Like, I think sometimes we get so formal with thinking like, oh, it's heaven and earth, but they're just family and they just want to talk to the people they love. It's pretty big.
Right. We're much closer than we're aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's a Camille, that's really good how you put it, because that overall, like I said, it was a good experience. But essentially that's even more overall than like just good experience as far as feeling was for me intellectually. It was just like, oh my gosh, I already like it just reestablished again that we're completely in the same, we're doing the
Space.
same thing, we can't see them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we're that belief that they're still present and we're all interconnected. Like I can't remember who it was, a prophet or an apostle of the LDS church that had said, which I'm realizing you're probably going to have to either find it and put it in the notes, because we don't want to, when stating that can be really contradictory. But essentially they said it's like walking through a doorway. It's like walking through a
Right.
doorway into the other room. It's not like some crazy difference. And so after this, I was just like, yeah, totally,
Yeah.
like totally. So anyways,
It
as
almost
we,
like it validates the fact that we have a belief that, we came from before, we have an after, and there's like a whole purpose and point to it. It makes it real. It brings it to a different level of understanding within our body. Be like, oh, it must really be that way.
One of the biggest, I think, that maybe challenges that people would have with this concept is they say, but from my understanding, when we have loved ones on the other side, they're busy. They're doing God's work. Like, why would they have time to come and
mm-hmm.
talk to us? Like, they're off doing some type of mission. Well, because, like I said, if earth is here, heaven is not here. It's not like, oh, they're so
Yeah.
unreachable. They're here. And also, I think if you guys use the Marco Polo app, I know Elle uses it because that's how we talk. But when you send a message to somebody, it gets stored and they can watch it when they have time. That's how I view it is, maybe, my son Wesley isn't like hovering 24/7, like, what's mom gonna do? What's she gonna think next? What can I do for her? He has other things he does, but when he senses something that he can do for me, like, he receives that message when he has the time. It's stored in the information field. If you guys have watched our episode with the physicist, and then when he wants to access it, he can. That information, there's such a flow of information in the spirit world. They communicate telepathically. It's just so advanced compared to what we do here on Earth. It's not hard for them. It's not hard for God. The system, it's organized, so
Mm-hmm.
the communication flows.
Right.
Yeah.
And it happens at such a different speed. Like they can still be doing work and come in and out, like because of the speed of thought. So they don't have physical, they're not having to get in their car and drive 20 minutes to your house in order to have a conversation with you. They don't even have to call you on the phone. Like there's not that boundary. There's not a go-through device because they are not physical. So they can be doing work and have, communication with you at the same time.
Yeah, their
That
brains
is
are so
cool.
much less limited than ours are. It's hard to perceive.
Right.
That, and it makes me think though too, like we are, like we are their work. They are our work.
Right.
Like truly, like
Yes.
what more
That's a
important
very
work
good
is
point.
there than your family?
Yeah.
Literally. And so that was one thing that was interesting. Like I said at the beginning, I didn't have anyone specific in mind. That was like I was trying to reach out to, but I also wasn't going into it thinking like I want to connect with some random person that I have no idea who they are, or someone famous like George Washington or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was interesting completely going into it without any expectation. And who were the ones that came up? Family that actually passed away. And I guess that was just kind of surprising to me because I didn't have an expectation, but
Mhm.
also I guess not surprising now.
How did it feel? Because you were worried coming in, right, about, whether or not this might be crossing a line and how it was going to make you feel, what would carry over afterwards.
Right.
So what was the tone? How did it make you feel during the session?
Um, like I said, I felt really comfortable just because I'm talking with people that I'm choosing to trust, somebody that I know. And then when I'm hearing, so for one thing, I am more of an intellectual thinker than a feeler. So the spirit for me personally, communicates, I feel the spirit stronger through first mentally, and I'm working on the connection to the heart part. Like it's usually there. I just am not as
Focused
readily
on it.
available. Yeah, I'm not as what is the word?
Aware of it.
Proficient in my feelings awareness, I guess you could say. So overall I kind of felt like we're just having a conversation. My mind did wonder a little bit, like, so very first off, they have no idea. Let's see, Camille had met me one time, but just like super briefly.
Was it McKinley?
When
Not
she was
Camille,
visiting
it was
Elle.
McKinley.
Oh, excuse me, McKinley. But so anyways, so these other three women didn't know me. Elle knows me. And
But I don't know anything about your family, really. So.
yeah, she doesn't. Yeah, she knows me. And I don't think we might have maybe talked one time about my sister-in-law that was deceased, but I don't recall. Like it wasn't an in-depth conversation. If we did, it was more
Right.
like a passing thing. But anyways, so when they were checking in or whatever you call it, connecting.
Bringing through information is generally what we would call it.
Yeah. Okay. So while they were doing that to just figure out the presence of who wanted to communicate from the other side, it was just kind of like, I wondered how much. Elle had told me before, don't give too much information, because that's part of the thing, is to not necessarily validate. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but so they're checking if what they're sensing is on point or not, if it's accurate. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, first just getting some information and checking in was very just basic, like I'm seeing this, or I'm feeling this, from just the different personalities, how they connect. And then I questioned, like, okay, how much information do you give, and how much information do you not give, so that you don't feel like, oh, because if you're skeptical, you're obviously gonna be like, well, I told her that this person died, or oh, just by saying her, now they know it's a her, or whatever,
feeding information.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good question too, because a lot of people come in and they either are afraid of cold reading, which is like gathering information beforehand, or hot reading, which is gathering information from the person while you're like sitting with them. Or like what you're going to like, because as a spirit communicator, we don't want to bias ourselves with information that you're giving. So people who are oversharing, who are like, I see a woman here. I feel like it's your mother. Yes, my mom. She died 5 years ago. She was 5'2" and she was like a at-home baker, all this information and stuff. Like that kind of information spilling forward all at once. That's the kind of stuff we want to bring forward. That's the kind of information that we want to be able to have validated so that we can confirm with you the identity of the person that we're talking to.
Right.
So, yeah. So giving more like yes or no answers, unless prompted for more information to follow up with something, with a question, is usually the best response when having a session with spirit communicator.
And because I think there were more than one, like I feel like everyone kind of got the same as far as when it came to gender, but I did feel a little bit like maybe there was somebody coming through for one specific medium, and then somebody else coming through for another medium, if that makes sense.
We pick up on different people sometimes, and sometimes we pick up on the same people.
Yeah, it was just a really chill, good experience. I was nervous. At the beginning, like I said, I was a little bit nervous and skeptical because I didn't want like spirits following me around after. And I didn't want to have nightmares because I hate nightmares. But it was completely chill, and
there was no spooky vibe, right?
None
there was
whatsoever.
No spooky,
and
not
literally
seancey.
No incense burning.
Exactly. Yeah. That is one question I had, because it was interesting, like the fact, like I really did feel like I was like, yeah, we're connecting with somebody that's already passed on, but I already knew that that was a thing that like I already have a belief system in place where I believe that there was a premortal and afterlife. And so it wasn't like too shocking to me or anything. Even so the beginning, it's just kind of trying to find out who's present. And then one my sister-in-law came up, and she was one that was communicating, and that was one question I kind of had. I was like, is it because it seemed like she was kind of, I don't know if I would use the word shy, but almost unsure, like, because she passed away fairly recently. And so it was like, I don't know, is this almost on the other side there too? They're like, I don't know, I've never used a medium before. Can we really do this? Like, this is kind of weird. I kind of got that vibe almost from her, like, I don't know, I guess I'll try it out. And that was something that I wondered. I'm like, is it as hard for them to kind of believe, like being a first time communicating, or you know what I mean?
There are definitely spirits who are shyer and who are more talkative, first of all. Like,
Hmm.
and it goes back to personality. Like if somebody was really introverted and really not a word person and really quiet, they probably are going to be like that on the other side too. And if they were really gabby and really talky and really like personable, they're probably going to be like that on the other side too.
Yeah.
But there is also kind of a belief like there's a learning curve even in spirit, and most spirits pick it up really quickly. But you have to know how to you have to figure out how to use your energy in order to connect
Mm-hmm.
that bridge through to the physical world that we still live in.
Hmm.
And sometimes there is a bit of a learning curve to that. And spirits who are kind of newer through to the spirit world are maybe still gathering that learning curve or learning how much energy to use or how to communicate
Mm-hmm.
better that way. Because there is a different level necessary to talk to us in a physical body as opposed to talk to another spirit, right? It's like too much or too little. You have to kind of gauge the right amount of water to pour into a glass. You don't want to flood the glass and you don't want to like have this much at the bottom. You want to have the right amount. So, but it doesn't usually prevent people from communicating, I would
Right.
say, in my experience.
Well, and they get to practice communicating with each other that way. So, based on a lot of experiences I've read, on the other side, they communicate telepathically. So they're
Oh
putting
yeah.
Spirit to spirit. It's
words
spirit to
and
spirit, mind to
thoughts.
mind communication.
Yeah, and they all can even show each other images because I was reading something about a guy who wanted to learn things and he's asking all these questions and they were teaching him the things he wanted to know like in the most efficient way possible. So sometimes it was words and sometimes it was images, and I think feelings, like he's just having to pick up on all these signals they were sending him. There's different ways to communicate, so I think they got to practice that communicating with each other on the other side.
Once it was established, and I think, I don't know, you guys tell me. I think that the more practiced the medium is, the quicker the finding out who it is that wants to communicate with you goes, and then a message can come across. Because otherwise it was, if they're like, and sometimes it can be a significant message, I would probably assume if you're like seeking after someone specific, maybe that would be a more significant message to you. But like I didn't get anything that I wasn't personally already aware of. For example, like my sister-in-law said sorry, like she's so sorry for how fast that everything happened, losing her and stuff like that. And I was like, I already knew, I knew that, like and so um but it was cool to hear that she was just like, I'm sorry, you know.
I was gonna say, I think sometimes like the messages, because I remember I was connecting to your grandma and she was talking about your boys, right? And one of them, he's
Oh
doing well
yeah.
in school, and the other one's not. And that's information you already know. But I think sometimes it's just nice to know that they know. You know what I mean? That like what's on our
Yes,
plate is
yeah,
on their
yeah,
plate, kind of.
that's exactly true. Because it's like oh, they're your grandma knows you already have a lot on your plate and like you
Oh,
don't get
yeah.
appreciated for it very much or whatever.
Hmm.
And it's almost like, yeah, of course, I already know that, but it was cool to be like, oh yeah, they know.
Well, because then
And
you
they're
know you're not doing
supportive.
this
Somebody
alone.
knows.
Yeah.
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 And the fact that they, a lot of time they'll come through with like, not only am I aware of it, but I'm helping you here.
Hmm.
Like,
Yes. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
doing this on the other side to help you do this on your side
Yeah.
of that veil. And I think it's also just really reaffirming. It's like another witness. It's like another validation for
Yeah.
things that you maybe suspect, but it's comforting. Like you said with your sister-in-law, I was like, of course she'd be sorry. Like you knew her well
Right.
enough to know the choices that she made led to a place with an undesirable outcome that she would regret, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But having them like knowing that they're saying that and they're feeling that is it's just like another form of comfort, of validation. Like if your kid breaks your vase, you know they're sorry, but you still want to hear them say it, right? You still want to
Yeah.
hear them confirm that. And I think that there's that too.
Yeah. And just for example, I was just thinking of this morning because we do in sessions tell people when we feel prompted to that they're being supported and, you know, helped on the other side by certain family members, but it's going to be mostly in perceive, like something we can't perceive. And today, this morning, my 7-year-old daughter is autistic and she was having a big fit over something. I'd gotten mad at her because she had basically dumped an entire shampoo bottle into her bathtub. And I was like,
Happens all the
ah,
time.
so fun. Yeah. And then there was a couple other like messes that were pretty bad. And so I just had gotten mad at her. And then my husband came home from dropping off our daughter um, at school this morning. And so then she was kind of like playing that card, like, oh, dad, mom's the worst, you know, and throwing a fit, like, whereas she'd calmed down. And then so we had to calm her back down from that fit. And then she started eating her breakfast cereal. And usually when she gets upset, it can last up to 4 hours. I mean, not always that long, but she doesn't switch her mood. She's has autism. She gets like in her like rigid lane. And out all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she's eating her cereal and she gets just really chill and casual. And then she starts talking about animals, which is one of her favorite things to talk about. And I was like, she just flipped a switch, but she's not good at doing that on her own. It's almost like there was a spiritual presence that came and helped out.
Uh-huh.
And I have no reason for why. And then the rest of the morning was like delightful. I drove her to school and we talked about the aquarium and we talked about the zoo. She wants to be a zookeeper and we were talking about that. It was like the best morning, but it was not set up to be that way. Because I had gotten upset and there was no reason why it should have gone that well. There had to have been some level of divine intervention. I can't explain it.
Yeah. Spiritual help on the other side. We also get, glimpses of that through doing this of like people who take accountability for it. Like all the time it'll happen in sessions with people where it's like, this thing happened and I want you to know that that was me. And you're like, I suspected that. Like I thought it was
Yes.
you. And it's like they can
Yes.
confirm and validate that. And that is really special when you
Yes.
can get the answer. Because we don't always get the why, but we do get the why. Sometimes it's tender.
It can be really huge for people. I was doing a session with a lady once and her husband has a lot of health problems and she was just like, I just want to know if there's people on the other side looking out for me. And I got this guy that came in and, you know, their personalities don't change. And I was just like, he doesn't have a lot to say. He's just hanging out. I think he's giving me the image that he was a blue collar worker and da da da. It was her father-in-law on the other side. And he showed me an image of this lady's husband in a hospital. And then the father-in-law was visiting from the other side. And so I mentioned that. And she was like, he was just in the ER like over the weekend. And that was really touching because I guess growing up, her husband didn't have a dad who was really present. So now he's kind of making up for lost time on the other side. So it was really tender.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was just going to go on with the experience that I asked about the question of what's the significance, not what is. There is a significance and a difference between connecting with the spirits on the other side and the Holy Ghost. For me, the Holy Ghost is going to speak truth and witness of Jesus Christ, and the information that I got of like how I could be of support to my kids was awesome, but I found my mind almost like gaining a little traction of anxiety about like, oh, I need to do these things that the spirit suggested, like just being mindful of my kids' needs in a little different way. And as soon as I started thinking that, I was like, no, but because the Holy Ghost, I know the Holy Ghost has asked me to focus on these certain things. And it didn't have anything to do with what kind of this, my family members or loved ones suggested.
Hmm.
So that's what caused me to think about like, well, obviously there's a difference and a line between like, I'm not going to base my testimony or fully like, I don't know, maybe you guys can talk about that a little more, because I'm not going to like try to completely refocus and try to listen to those spirit, which are still
Yeah,
family and loved ones and good and inspiring, but I'm rather going to keep my attention and focus on the Holy Ghost and what I'm feeling prompted from the Holy Ghost.
right.
Yeah. I think there's a hierarchy. And so we need to be aware of, God first, Holy Ghost, God first, and then family members. It's good to get input, but it's kind of like having a family member on this side of the veil. Like you
Yes.
go to your mom for
Yes.
advice and she's going to tell you what she thinks, but then you might pray about it and get a different answer. So you get to decide which, influence you follow more.
Thank you. That's specific.
Yeah.
That's perfect. It is like family on the earth side. It is so much like that that I think I get almost like it's so much more simple as far as the basics of it. Like they literally are our loved ones, and I
Yeah.
just
Right.
over complicate it in my head.
I think there's a lot of people who come to intuitives to look for answers to problems. And I'm always cautioning them. I'm like, look, you should pray about that. Like,
Right.
go find your answer about that because what I'm going to get from your loved ones on the other side is their opinion.
Yeah.
And they have an expanded perspective, but it's still their opinion, right? They're not seeing the future.
Yeah.
They're not gonna tell you the winning lotto numbers, right? Like
Right.
they're gonna give you their perspective, just like Camille said, just as if they were here, they were on Earth. But they're not gonna be. It's advice in the same sense, and they might have a little bit of a greater understanding than we do.
Right.
But God is our focus. Christ is our
Yeah.
focus. The facilitator through that is the Holy Ghost. So it's kind of a grain of salt
Okay. Okay.
situation. You take everything in context, you gather it all together, and you see what shakes out, right? Pray about it, just like you do when you go talk to a good friend about it and a thing that
Right.
you're struggling with, and see what the Lord has to say about it, because ultimately He's the authority. I think He facilitates these things for a lot of healing and a lot of growth and
Mm-hmm.
connection, obviously, because we want to be connected to our loved ones, our family, our ancestors. And it's all very interesting. And sometimes they give really sound advice. But sometimes we do need to remember that the focus is God, focused is Christ, and the Holy Ghost is a facilitator to that.
Absolutely.
Cool.
There's a lady that I met who had a session, and her mom came through, and her mom really wanted her to get back together with a former boyfriend. So the whole session, mom was just like, "Oh, what about this old boyfriend?" And she's like, "Mom, I'm not interested in this guy. Like, you know this. Why did you?" Because she was like, I just feel like my mom wants to tell me something." So she had a session, and it was kind of like, I don't want to say it was a waste of time, but she was like, "Mom, I'm not going to get back together with my old boyfriend. I know you love him and you think he's the greatest guy, but like, her mom is her mom, and that's what she wanted to say."
Oh,
Yeah.
that is funny. That is funny.
I've had so many sessions, people have come where they're like looking for business advice or investing, and I'm like, I'm not gonna tell you that. You're looking at the wrong place, man.
Well, and also you can only give what you're getting. I mean, a lot of times spirits they don't have anything to say about certain things.
Right.
Yeah,
As
Or
if
they're wise
physical
enough to
things
know
matter
not
to
to.
them.
right. They're wise enough to
Yeah,
know not to say anything. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So overall, Amanda, do you think that it is, how do I want to phrase this? Is this an experience that you think you found enlightening, uplifting? Do you think you left feeling connected?
Yeah. Yeah. I did feel leaving or feeling connected um overall. Yeah. And like I said, I think depending on the person seeking out to visit with a medium or not, or to have a session. Like I said, I haven't necessarily lost anyone that's really close to me. It'd probably be a different experience if like my husband had passed away, or my mom or dad, or a child. But because it wasn't anyone right within my circle,
It
it
was more
wasn't
interesting than
as,
moving.
yes. Yeah. And more of an experience, like not just interesting, like, but it was validating, like, oh yeah, that, like, that's so cool that some people have. It was validating for me that your guys' spiritual gift is an actual gift. Like, it's not just something like for a, what do they call it? Magic show or something like
Party
that.
trick.
Party trick. Thank you.
Do you
Like,
say, do
people
you
could
think,
totally use it for that, but
do you think you left a little less skeptical?
oh, way less skeptical. And it helped. And the reason why I'm glad that I did it is because I feel like now that I've had the experience, I can articulate better to people that are skeptical and be like, dude, whatever you're thinking, like, you have no need to be scared.
Yeah.
It's just like having a three-way conversation. I'm talking to you and I'm talking to the person on the other side, and we're just exchanging information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the great magic here, like you were talking about, everybody has a different need. Everybody has a different need
Yeah.
that gets addressed when they come see somebody with this gift who communicates with spirits. Some people have a real need for
Yeah.
that healing,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that
me.
need pulls it out, right? Camille, you've seen this a ton of times. I've seen this numerous times. It is a different thing when it's intellectually, you're like curious, like what's going to
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah.
But when you come and you're like, I need to talk to my mother. I need to talk to my son. I need to talk. Like you have that grief or that longing for that. The experience becomes so real and present. Like that spirit is there in the room with you. And the healing that is capable in moments like that. I mean, Amanda, just the experience you had, you could probably see how that would be that would work
Oh,
out that
yeah.
way.
Oh, yeah.
Um, it it has great power to
Yeah.
help or inform or comfort, heal, move you through that process. So everybody's experience is different.
Mm-hmm.
With us, every session is different. We never know what is going to occur beforehand. It's all like a great experiment. You don't know who exactly is going to come through. You don't know what exactly they're going to say and or how it's going to be received by the person, on
Yep.
this other end with us. So it's always a great experiment to see what occurs. Yeah, and as a spirit communicator, it's both nerve-wracking and terribly exciting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And I mean, we talk about things like, so I have a calling within my congregation, with the family history work. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, I don't want to call it family history work, although there is work involved. And I'm like, I want to call it family history connection. And that caused me to think about this. And it's like, this essentially is, it's just not just, because connection is huge. We're all connected to each other. And as children of God is what I believe. So it's like just another evidence of that for
Yeah.
people that need that, because, and I think too, for the skeptics out there, like, go and have the experience, like yourself, if you're a skeptic. I would even, like, you can either take someone's word off of it and seek to know for yourself, like through the Spirit, through the Holy Ghost, if what that person is saying is true, or go do it yourself, have a session, and realize that it's nothing voodoo, it's nothing black magic. I mean, honestly, that's the same thing. Like, the adversary is going to take anything good and just twist it. So,
Right.
you can't, I would say, for the skeptics, like, you can't don't just disclaim this, and I wouldn't put other people down for seeking to want to speak to a medium just because maybe you yourself don't have the need or desire. It doesn't give you credit to say like that their need or desire is invalid because they desire to speak with someone on the other side.
Connection.
Very well said.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your perspective with that, Amanda. I think a lot of people come into any kind of reading or session and they're like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what this is
Mm-hmm.
going to be like. It's pretty informative to hear from somebody else's experience in such a detailed way. I'll just put it out there. Both Camille and I offer sessions. You can get in contact with either of us, both of us, all of us, through the Through the Rail podcast website. Our email is there. You can join our Facebook community also and have that. We also have our Thursday night meetups. They're the last Thursday of every month, and those are free, and you are welcome to attend those as well. And we answer all the questions that we get on those nights as well. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. See you next time. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks.